We'll start with the body. Grab your body piece and fold it in half. Now we're going to stitch up all of the open sides. Grab your darning needle and thread the yarn. This is how I like to thread my yarn. I find it the easiest, but you can do it however you want. Fold the edges together so they're nice and flat. Then locate the top of all the stitches. We're going to put our needle into the stitches to stitch them together. Put the needle through the side of the stitch. Make sure you're coming from the inside to the outside. Pull it nice and tight. Then find the next stitch along. Always put your needle through the far side, coming through to the near side. Then back over the top and to the far side again. Through the far side, through the near side and out, pulling it nice and tight. This will keep it together, and I find this way of stitching things together the easiest. You can also do mattress stitch or any kind of stitch you want. I just find this easiest. Following this method, your work should look something like this. Keep going all the way along. Now that I've gotten to the end, I'm going to have to tie off. You can see here that I have one side opened at the bottom. We'll sew that up in a second. First, we're going to tie off at this end. Put your needle through the work and pull the yarn through. Then, before you pull it completely closed, we're going to take the needle and put it back through the loop you just made, pulling that tight. We will repeat that. I like to put it through the yarn that we just tied off, then pull it through so you have a loop, put the needle back through the loop, and then pull it tight again. I tend to do this 3 or so times when I'm doing a toy like this, just so that it's not going to come undone at all. Once you've pulled the knots nice and tight and you're satisfied with how many knots you've done, you're going to then hide the yarn by threading the needle through into the inside of your work. You're going to grab the needle from the inside and you're going to pull it through so you can't see the knot anymore. No need to sew in the end because it's going to be on the inside. If you're like me and you didn't start on the same side you ended on, you're going to have to add another piece of yarn to sew up the other end. Using your needle, thread the yarn through. It doesn't have to be anywhere specific. I always like to put it on the far side, but it's your choice. Then I tie a bunch of knots. I tend to like to do 3. It really depends what it's going to be used for and how secure you have to make it. Once you're finished tying your knots, you're going to tuck the tail end into your work. Continue stitching it together like we've done so far until you get about halfway. We're now going to stuff it. You can use any kind of stuffing you want. You can even use scrap bits of yarn that you've kept. When stuffing, I like to make sure it goes to the very bottom into the corners to make it nice and plump as possible. It's up to you how much you want to stuff it, but I like to keep on stuffing until it gets to about this. Then you're going to sew the rest of it up. I like to pull it nice and tight before I keep going, and I'll often put my finger to hold the stuffing in while I sew it up. You go from the far side to the near side and pull it nice and tight. Keep doing this until you get to the very end. When I get to the end, I'm going to do 3 or so knots, just like we did on the other side. Once I'm satisfied with how many knots I've done, I'm going to hide the tail inside the body, just like we did on the other side. Push the needle through the work and push it until it comes out the other side. Then you're going to pull it nice and tight, so tight that on the side that it's coming from, it indents a little bit. Then you're going to cut the yarn with the tension and then squish it out just a little bit on the other side, and then you've finished sewing the body together. Next, grab your arms and we'll sew them on. Locate whereabouts you'd like to sew them on. I'm going to put mine about here. We're going to sew this on the same way we sewed the body together. Imagine the body as the far side and the arm as the near side. You're going to put your needle through the far side, through the body. Make sure you get a few stitches when you come through. Then you're going to come back through the near side, which is the arm. Then back through the body, making sure that we do get a few different loops, just so that it stays nice and tight. We don't want the arms to be pulled off. You can see here that I'm going straight through the arm and then through the body in one motion. You can do it like that. You don't have to, but I just find it a little bit quicker. Don't forget to pull it nice and tight as you go along. Keep stitching along until you get to the end of the arm and then secure it with a bunch of knots just like we did with the body. And then do the same on the other side. I just eyeball it to make sure the arm is the same height. No one's going to know if it's not perfect if you can't see it. For the eyes, I like to place them down and eyeball it, just make sure they're about the same height and about the same position on either side. Then I will use a safety pin, and only a safety pin, to pin the eye to the body. I find this helps me keep the eye flat when we sew it on. The eye gets sewn on exactly the same way as the arm and the body were sewn together. Find the stitches just next to the edge of the eye, put your needle through there and pull it tight. Then find the stitch in the eye, put your needle through that. Once you've put it through and pulled it tight, you're going to then come back around to the body. You're going to find the stitch next to the next stitch in the eye on the body. Put it through that stitch and then pull it tight again. You want to make sure that the stitches on the body are directly next to the stitches on the eye, just so you're not pulling the eye too tight. That'll keep the eye nice and flat and make sure it keeps its round shape. I like to spin my work slowly as I do the eye, just as it is circle and it's easier to keep where I'm working at the top. Keep stitching on this eye, then finish it off just like we've finished off everything else we've done so far. I tend to do only 2 knots on the eye because it's very unlikely that someone will actually pull off the eye. Once you finish the 2 knots, or finish struggling with the 2 knots as you can see me doing here, we're going to take a breath because making something isn't easy, and then we're going to hide the tail of the yarn into the body, just like we did when we sewed the body together. Do this with both eyes and then you should have something that looks akin to what I have here. If you're feeling a bit creative or a little bit extra, you can add a mouth or legs or hair. The possibilities are endless. And then you're done. You have your very own Mini-Gogster. Good job!